Our first story deals with a subculture of heavy metal music that some feel is sending a dangerous message to your kids. It's been associated with satanic worship, suicide, and animal sacrifice. But is death metal music just hype or something that could actually hurt your kids?
By the mid-1980s, metal was changing. What had started as classic heavy metal and then evolved into thrash was becoming faster, more violent, and darker. In the United States, bands like Possessed and Death began to break the rules. Their guitars were tuned lower, the vocals became guttural, and the lyrics started to speak about death, decay, and the occult. In 1985, Possessed released Seven Churches, an album many consider to be the first cornerstone of the genre. 2 years later, Death, led by Chuck Schuldiner, released Scream Bloody Gore, and death metal was officially born. From there, the style spread quickly. In Florida, the scene grew with bands like Morbid Angel, Obituary, and Deicide, more technical, more brutal. Meanwhile, in Europe, especially in Sweden, the genre took a different turn. There, death metal sounded dirtier, denser, almost as if it were rising from a grave. Bands like Entombed, Dismember, and Grave defined that sound with the famous Boss HM2 distortion pedal, creating what we now know as Swedish death metal. And it was within that legacy, in the very land of filthy and aggressive sound, that years later Repugnant would emerge, a band determined to revive the essence of the most primitive death metal, when the genre still reeked of blood, death, and youthful rebellion. This is the story of the band, whose vocalist would later become the frontman of one of the most successful rock acts of our time. Before Ghost, before the fame, this is where it all began. This is the story of Repugnant. In 1998, in Norsborg, just outside Stockholm, Sweden, a 17-year-old Tobias Forge set out to create a band that would revive the old-school Swedish death metal spirit. The filth, the speed, and the unfiltered aggression that had defined bands like Entombed and Dismember years earlier. I was sitting at home one day listening to the mighty Horrified by Repulsion when I decided to go and check out the correct translation of the word repulsion to Swedish. I started flipping through the dictionary and found the word repugnant almost next to repulsion. It took me about 5 minutes to decide that was to be the name of my new-founded band. So I'd say our name is very inspired by Repulsion. The original 1998 lineup of Repugnant consisted of Chris Piss on drums, Carl Drunkschwein on bass, and Tobias Kopromancer on guitars and vocals. Tobias would later change his stage name within the band to Mary Gore, a pun inspired by one of his favorite musicians, Gary Moore. Members joined and left until the final lineup in October 2002. In February 1999, they recorded their first demo, Spawn of Pure Malevolence. All guitar tracks on the recording were performed by Tobias, while all bass parts were handled by Carl. Tobias also created the artwork and layout for the release. Initially, the vocals were handled by the bassist, but Tobias envisioned something different for the band, and soon took over the role himself.
At the time of recording the demo in February 1999, I was not the vocalist. The bass player in the band was, and I didn't like his vocals. I like his vocals in his other band, but I didn't like it in Repugnant. He was sort of a new school. To me, it was new school, like that sort of like, and I wanted it to be like Shuck and Jeff Becerra, and I wanted it to sound like a 1985 death metal. So I was like, I think I can sing like that. So I'm gonna sing on the demo, and we'll figure it out.
After the release of Spawn of Pure Malevolence, internal changes came quickly. Carl was asked to leave the band and was replaced by Roy Morbidson. The band also recruited a second guitarist, Sid E. Burns. With this new lineup, Repugnant began to gain traction in the underground scene. Their raw energy, old-school sound, and relentless pacing set them apart from the more polished metal coming out of Sweden at the time. Later that same year, the band released their first official EP, Hikatum. It quickly became a cult favorite, selling well in the underground and pushing Repugnant further into the spotlight of the death metal revival. This growing momentum caught the attention of the Dutch label Hammer Heart Records, who signed the band with plans for a full-length album. But Repugnant was still a young band, and internally things were unstable. Lineup changes, organizational problems, and miscommunication with the label soon took their toll. The band struggled to keep up with the expectations placed on them, and eventually Hammerheart Records dropped the contract. In an interview with blabbermouth.net in 2018, Tobias reflected on his time with Repugnant. We were picked up by a real label at the time and got a manager and had everyone kept their ducks in a row. I would have loved to have that band, a real band that was out touring, now knowing a lot of the things that is required, how many stars that need to align, and all the decisions you have to make. I can definitely look back on myself as a 21-year-old and quickly see why I didn't achieve that with Repugnant. I wasn't mature. I wasn't thinking. I wasn't there yet. Determined to continue, the band regrouped and released a new demo in 2001 titled Draped in Cherry Cloth, which strengthened their underground presence. Additional releases followed: the split Dunkel Besatet with Pentacle and the EP Premature Burial. Finally, between 2002 and 2003, Repugnant entered the studio to record what would become their only full-length album, Epitome of Darkness. The album's lineup featured Mary Gore on guitars and vocals, Sid Burns on guitars, Carlos Satanas on bass, and Tom Bones on drums. This would be Repugnant's definitive formation, the one that captured the pure, unfiltered vision Tobias had been chasing since his teenage years. But ironically, just as the band completed the album, everything collapsed. Repugnant disbanded in 2004, long before Epitome of Darkness was ever released. Years later, Tobias would look back on those days with a mix of pride and frustration, acknowledging that the band had ambition but lacked the experience and cohesion needed to survive. We had various degrees of falling out for different reasons. It just sputtered out. We've had our disagreements and whatnot, the same shit that everybody goes through. But nowadays, we don't really have much to do with each other anymore, but we're just friends. It wasn't until 2006 that the album finally surfaced through Soul Cellar Records, quickly becoming recognized as one of the most authentic tributes to late 80s and early 90s death metal ever recorded. Still, Repugnant's legacy remained strong. In 2010 and 2011, the band briefly reunited for select festivals, including Hell's Pleasure and Maryland Death Fest.
Are you morbid? Are you really morbid? This one is for you guys. Morbid away.
By 2010, around the underground metal scene, whispers began to circulate that Mary Gore might be the vocalist of a mysterious new band whose popularity was exploding: Ghost. Fans started to connect the dots. During the 2010 festival show's keen-eyed attendees noticed stickers of the Ghost logo on his guitar. And later, at Maryland Death Fest, both Repugnant and Ghost performed on the same night, which led fans to spot something peculiar. The vocalist of Repugnant and the masked vocalist of Ghost were wearing the exact same pair of shoes. Speculation intensified, and one particular tweet from Tobias, meant to deflect attention, only ended up fueling the theory even more. The 2010 and 2011 reunion shows would be the last time Repugnant appeared on stage. Tobias had already stepped into a new era with Ghost, and Repugnant was left behind, preserved exactly as it had always been, a band frozen in time. Many consider Repugnant one of the key bands responsible for reviving the old-school Swedish death metal sound at a time when the genre was moving toward cleaner production and modern trends. Epitome of darkness, recorded on a tiny budget and in a matter of days, would later be praised as one of the purest tributes to the late 80s and early 90s death metal era. Its raw aggression, dark atmosphere, and horror-inspired imagery became a blueprint for Tobias's later work. Repugnant was a band of instinct, attitude, and narrative, qualities that Tobias carried forward. The obsession with ritualistic imagery, masks, and theatricality in Ghost can trace its roots back to the early experimentation and stage persona of Mary Gore. Even the concept of combining anonymity with a strong visual identity, blending horror and performance, was first explored in Repugnant. Repugnant may not have conquered the world, but without them, the foundation for Ghost was never laid. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss more Ghost content. And remember,
Go live your lives, goddammit.